Speaking of good, we have a lot to get through in the next little bit. So we were gonna do our normal weekly segment, but something happened today, as of the day of this recording, that kind of pissed a lot of people off, me included, being a fan of this game and this company. We're gonna talk about the Bungie layoffs today. So we're recording this on Wednesday, July 31st. So you will hear this on August 5th, I think is Monday. Bungie laid off 220 people today with no notice. This came from a letter on Bungie.net from Pete Parsons, the CEO. They reduced staff by 17%. They not only did they lay off 220 people, but they are integrating 155 other employees into Sony Interactive Entertainment proper, which means they will be losing close to 400 people from the studio. This was... So as someone who pays a lot of attention to the obviously ingrained in the Destiny community and pays attention to Bungie, this we knew layoffs were coming since the last round of layoffs, because it has been talked about quite a bit in the community that people were going to be laid off. It was not known that it was going to be this bad again, especially because they laid off 108 people the last time, I think was the number. Mm-hmm. And this just continues the trend of a lot of developers just laying off staff to essentially save themselves, right? And this goes for Bungie's leadership too, because if they don't hit a certain financial mark, the leadership board gets taken over by Sony and by PlayStation Studios, and then Bungie will no longer be a quote unquote independent studio as part of Sony. They will not then be a PlayStation studio, along with the rest of the roster that Sony has. And so a lot of this was believed to have been done to avoid that situation. And it sucks because last time it was understandable to an extent, where like Lightfall wasn't very good. The player base lost interest. They missed revenue marks by 40%. And so layoffs were inevitable, I think, at that point. When you miss your, yearly revenue mark by 40%, that closes most studios. But the Final Shape is their most successful expansion since Forsaken. And they have touted as much since then. And to lay off this many people, and I know people at Bungie who got laid off, and I reached out to some of them. I haven't heard back from them. I wanted to see if they would comment, and even if it's anonymous, to kind of talk about. And nobody's obviously they're probably staying off because this is just such a hurtful, thing going on. But it's seeing this really sucks. And it's not just them. Like Armor Studios laid off a bunch of people today too, which is kind of like a smaller single A indie studio publisher. Like, man, layoffs, they're just not stopping. So I kind of...
Are these freelancers being laid off? Or
nope, these
full
are all
contract
full-time
employees.
Yeah,
these are full-time employees.
Wow.
The Verge kind of came out later and kind of they dug through, and it was a lot of QA people, a lot of merchandising people, a lot of some executives, but not many, even though they said it affected every level of the company, and some developers, but they were all... none of them were contracted. They were all full-time employees.
Wow.
So It
The
just
thing that like especially sucked about this one, and like they all suck, and it's just like a never ending just repeat cycle of like, you see the news about layoffs, you feel for the people who got laid off, you
Mhm.
are angry at the people who over projected, or that's something they said in the Bungie thing is like we were overly ambitious and the company's in the red, and it's like, well, whose fucking fault is that? It's not the people
Yeah.
that got laid off. But so we're in this constant cycle of being like, the people who caused this are not the people who are affected by this, really. And then they had the nerve, this really pissed me off. They had the nerve in their release about the layoffs to, I don't know if they're trying to be subtle about it, but they transitioned, like talking about the layoffs, talking about why it happened, and then transitioned into, please be excited about the new action adventure game that we're developing.
mhm.
And that was like, hey, can you just like announce that later? Like, can you at
Mhm.
least act like the most important thing you're announcing is that 220 people lost their jobs?
Yeah. And that's Pete Parsons for you. And I mean, he's been an executive at Bungie since almost the beginning.
Hmm.
Um, he's their CEO now, and he just doesn't want to give up that spot, which is like, okay, but like you said, not even you're starting to promote your new game in a layoff press release.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
what are you doing? Like, read the
Yeah.
room, guy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. If you've been an executive for this long, then you should know that it's going to suck to lay people off, and it's going to suck to have to put this announcement out there and face the backlash, which he went private on Twitter because he didn't want to face the backlash.
Yeah,
So
all of them
shout out to
did.
him once again for not, you know, owning up to what's going on here.
Yeah,
It's also
And
really
then,
mature too. Yeah.
especially
and
since this just happened 8 months ago.
yeah, so, but then, yeah, like you said, like if you've been an executive for this long, then like, couldn't you, or did they lay off the PR people who would be like, maybe don't try to announce a new game in the layoff
they
announcement,
they actually did lay off
Yeah.
their
Okay,
PR
well, there we
department, and
go.
they're
Yeah,
going through Uber strategists now.
there we
Which,
go.
shout out to CJ from Uber strategists. He's a nice guy. Get emails
I
from him
think
every day.
I think what really sucks is the fact that they're so throwable. Like developers, people who gave Bungie such good projects like this are just seen as like disposable. That's what's like really
Mhm.
heartbreaking because to me, I think video game is a form of art and there are some video games out there that deserve to be framed and put into a museum somewhere, right? Which also directly makes the developers artists in a way,
Mhm.
right? And so you have these, uh developers, developing studios, corporations like Bungie, sort of like harvesting these developers, these artists, quote unquote, for their work, releasing it, and then seing these people as, oh, throwaway.
And then
These are like
just
the
putting them out the pasture.
Mhm.
there.
Yeah,
I got my water. This is the empty plastic bottle. Let's throw it in the trash.
Mhm.
Recycle it for other people, other developers, and that's what's like really. It's like it's such a depressing thing to know about the industry. Like I love the games, we all love games, but knowing that this is a product of like unfairness in the industry and like uh the whole developers themselves not being respected enough, that's just like that's a bad thought to have in the back of your head.
Mhm.
yeah. It's yet another example of how art and like corporations are fundamentally incompatible. It's just you can't, they can't mix. There's always
Yeah.
going to be that clash.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it really sucks to see something like this happen at a developer like Bungie, especially because they've always been like projected themselves as community first, developer first. The developers care about the games they're making. I mean, you look at the original Halo trilogy. You look at the old Marathon games. You mean, you even look at something like Oni, right? Like, I mean, that game's not very good, but like there are still people at Bungie that worked on Oni and defend it, and they're proud of it. And it's like, you know these developers at Bungie are so proud of Destiny, and especially right now, right? I mean, look at all the positivity around Destiny and the final shape you know, I mean, LeBron, how many times have you made fun of me for like, oh, the final shape's probably it for me. I just want to see how it ends, to me being like, oh my God, I need to see what happens next.
Okay. So real quickly here, man. Like for people who are new out here and are this is their very first episode of the Boss Rush podcast. First of all, thank you, welcome. We hope to see more of you. uh, for months, Corey was like, "Man, I just cannot wait for the final shape to come out because I'm done as soon as it comes out."
I did.
That was his level of commitment and stuff like that. And then for like the next 3 weeks straight, like it was the only thing he could fucking talk about. And, it's like man, like this guy sounds like me when a new Monster Hunter game comes out. Except I've never said I'm going to quit Monster Hunter.
Yeah.
No. But in all honesty, I am so glad that a franchise you love is able to like reinvigorate you or bring you back to life and stuff like that. Because we hate to see it. Like we just had a conversation about Tekken and like how the community is feeling about that game and stuff like that. And it feels like, and honestly, if you hear like the majority, well, I feel like the negative people are always the ones that speak the loudest. They're always the ones you hear first and stuff like that. I'm enjoying Tekken. I've gotten used to like the changes and stuff in Tekken and stuff like that. Like, if we're gonna go with my favorite franchise, Monster Hunter, for example, like I feel like Monster Hunter Tri on the Wii was like the weakest edition, and that was the one I played. I want to say maybe I played like that game's lucky if you got 200 hours out of me, where other Monster Hunter games have gotten over 1,000 hours out of me.
Oh,
Yeah, like I play that game. I play that game just as hardcore as people play World of Warcraft, Final Fantasy 14, Destiny.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but yeah, this whole thing, like, we kind of knew it was coming, but but we're still surprised when it happened. In all seriousness,
Mm-hmm.
because I thought with the way the final shape, like how it rolled out, I was like, hey, this can be their stay of execution. But the fact that he still wound up laying off all these people and stuff like that. Once again, I always feel like I'm the person on the Boss Rush podcast is always the most vocal about layoffs and people getting blindsided and stuff like that, because in my working career, I've been laid off from a very good job, an engineering job, and that shit
wow.
sucked. That shit sucked, and it was because they overhired. They overhired, and yep, 2 years later, I don't have that job anymore. That job that was honestly going to be what set me up, and I would have retired with it. So yeah, I feel like I'm vocal because I've put my skin in the game and something similar to that, and things of that nature.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, going back to the whole, like, like these people are basically artists, like, like stuff like that. Like, how do you how can you justify staying in your career if the industry is this fickle, you know and let's look at it for what it is. None of these damn execs and CEOs are taking pay cuts unless you're in Japan and work for Nintendo. Those are about the only ones. We don't see this shit happening in the UK. We don't see this shit happening in Eurasia. We don't see it happens in North or South America. Like like it always. Like, yeah, like we're gonna just bleed. We're just gonna bleed out like all of our talent, and then we're gonna be like, "Woe is me, we can't make any good games." Like that's what happened to EA and Activision a while back. We
Yeah,
don't
I
have any
was
talent to make these games.
yeah, I was gonna say, like, I don't wish this because obviously I want good games to come out, and I want Corey here to keep enjoying Destiny for the rest of his life.
Mhm.
But this is what happens. Like, these companies, they overshoot, they overhire, they fire people, and then they're like, we lost all of this, this knowledge. Basically, the
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
people who were instrumental in using the knowledge they had to, like you said, turn around Destiny from one expansion to the next, a lot of those people are probably gone now, and they're going to have to either teach new people how to do it, or worse, they're going to make one person do the job of two people and hope that that works, which both of those options are not good for the art.
Mm-hmm.
That's another thing that kind of infuriates me too, because we have all these HR departments talking about how retention is the biggest way to lose money, for a company and stuff like that. And like, I don't know, like, do these people not listen to their own words that it's like the call is coming from inside the house, you know. Like if you can't listen to the people, they're there to make sure you keep making money, or you at least stay in the black, you know. Like, why the hell are you there?
Yeah,
Right.
especially
Yeah. I
because like,
think
oh, go ahead,
oh,
go ahead.
sorry. You go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say, like, especially because like when you're speaking about Bungie, like over the course of the last 6 months before in between layoffs, Joe Blackburn, their game director, left. Katarina Macedo left, who was their expansions director for the last 4 years. You know, Michael Salvatore got laid off during the last round, which is like he's like a legendary composer, right up there with Marty McDonald. I mean, I know he's kind of a weirdo now, but like,
And not just legendary, like right before he got laid off, didn't he win an award on
mhm,
the Game Awards?
mhm.
He won an award.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow.
And so like you have all these big names leaving the company before the layoffs, and it's like, I mean, you know, uh, there's just, I mean, their community people have all left. Like Deej left, Damage left, and I mean, Damage is back now, but like, Liana Rupert left. Well, she got laid off and was like very vocal about being laid off, and like it's just all these people. Christopher Barrett got laid off, who was at one point the game director of Marathon, which now we don't know what's going on with that. And
Yeah, like that was the other thing too. Like when I read the statement and stuff, I was like, "What's happening with Marathon?" Because I didn't see anything about that. Like all they want to talk about was Destiny, which at the same time I get, because Destiny is the only thing they've been fucking doing for the
the only
last
thing
like
it's the only thing that's
Destiny's been
making
going
them
on for
money.
what, like
10 years.
Destiny's been going on for what, 10 years? Okay, I was about to say 8.
September is the 10-year anniversary.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. Yeah, it's just, this is so crazy that all this, it just continues to happen. And so I looked up how there's a game industry layoff tracker website. And in 2023, just over 11,000 people got laid off for the year. We are in June, and we are at
We've surpassed it.
11,250 people, and that has not added the Bungie or the Armor Studios layoffs today.
Yeah, yeah, it's been surpassed.
So that would be around 1,150 or 11,500 people laid off
Yeah.
already.
Could it be the fact that these companies are throwing so much money at the games that they're producing, by the time it's out and by the time it's released, they don't have enough in their pockets to really sustain the developers?
Yeah, well,
And if
thing
that was the case, then why wouldn't they just
Mhm.
hire more freelancers instead of
Yeah. The thing with with Bungie is that they overhired. They drastically overhired because they had huge ambitions, especially when COVID hit. Right? They bought an old mall to build a new headquarters for Bungie. They were going to open a publishing arm in Europe to publish games. They created something like 6 to 10 incubation teams to create new franchises that is in part of this article, which is what that new game is that they spun out into a new studio, which they can't handle, that PlayStation is now going to take over. And they wanted to run three AAA franchises at one studio with multiple games and spin-off games and mobile games attached to all these franchises.
The decision making in AAA gaming is so short-sighted that like these things, like they say these are unavoidable, but it's just because the people who are making the decisions are not thinking long term. You say like at the beginning of COVID, this is when like money was unlimited for gaming, right? Everyone thought like, oh, gaming's spiking. Okay, now it's time to spend a ton of money, hire a bunch of people, start a bunch of projects.
Yeah.
And it's all just short-sighted decision making. And then we get to more short-sighted decision making when it's like, oh, we're not going to meet our targets, we need to cut costs. Well, the way we cut costs the fastest is to lay people off.
Yeah, like cutting. I don't feel like I've like I have a partnership in the business that I work at and stuff like that. And the only time, and like, it's not like we have like this crazy ass workforce, but like it, but like right now, like like if, well, let's say we weren't making like like our profit and stuff like that, like we would like, me and my partner will like re-strategize like our marketing, or like our pricing, or how we push stuff. And we like we would never cut off the workforce unless the workforce is the real problem.
Yeah, but it's just, what can we do right now to make our numbers look better tomorrow? We can cut a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And games are such a weird product for like huge, billion-dollar companies, because games take so long to actually see the return on what you're doing, that
Yeah.
it feels worse when the decisions are so short-sighted, because like I forget what developer it was or what publisher recently like fired a bunch of people because games were taking too long. And it's like, what did you think was going to happen? Like, this stuff takes a long time.
Wasn't that Microsoft that did that shit?
It might have been Microsoft. I mean, I was going to joke earlier. You guys could just have like a weekly "Who Gets Laid Off This Week" segment on the podcast if you wanted to be
Yeah, we
super
we
cynical about it.
We
Like, you
could do
could,
a bingo
oh
chart.
yeah,
we thought about that, and then we depressed ourselves. So
yeah. It's
Well,
a very depressing way to
Yeah.
run the show, but
yeah,
it's just I mean, games are such a weird product, right? And there's so much money that, like, I feel like people who don't understand the industry get into it because they think like, oh, gaming's where all the money is. So
yeah.
mhm.
that's we're gonna
Yeah.
follow it there. And like, not to say the CEO of Bungie doesn't understand the gaming industry, but like it just, these quick decisions, they're just heartless to, you know, the person who made the decision that put us in these positions is not going to feel the repercussions of it.
Mhm.
It's the, like you said, people that work in merchandising who have no fucking involvement in these level of decisions, right? They're just going to work, trying to do their job and go home. And now that's gone.
Yeah. It's I feel for everybody who got laid off today. I really do, because like,
Yeah.
I mean, if a game isn't successful, like, you can kind of see it from a business perspective, but like, the final shape was successful by all counts, right?
Yeah.
Financially.
There's a case with that with EA and Dead Space remake.
Mm-hmm.
It's They were in talks to do the Dead Space 2 remake, but because it didn't reach the sales didn't reach their expectations, that idea got scrapped, unfortunately,
Yeah.
because they didn't sell as many millions of copies as they
I'm
wanted to, as they
still
projected. And that like
I'm
went
still
below their
holding out hope.
expectations. And that's just like, it's crazy to think about, because like you see Nintendo games like barely hitting the 1 million mark and then getting a sequel for them a couple years later. Whereas EA is like, oh, this didn't make like this didn't reach 10 or 20 million, so we're gonna scrap their sequel that we had in plan because it didn't like reach our expectations. So it's like a game could do so well, but then
Mm-hmm.
because of these like sort of like umbrella corporations, it's just like it's not really gonna get anywhere.
Yeah, there's tons of examples across the industry of well received games that, they didn't sell 30 million copies, but they sold pretty well, or they got like insanely good reviews,
Right.
and it's not enough to make a good game. It's like, as a someone working at some of these companies, if you do your job super well and you make a very good game, you are guaranteed nothing.
Yep. Yeah. It's not a safe spot to be in, for sure.
No.
It's but I want to talk about the bright side about some of these layoffs real quick before, well,
There's a bright side.
not like a bright side, but like
I know,
a
I know, I know.
silver
I'm
lining,
being
I guess.
sarcastic. I'm being sarcastic.
I think with some of these layoffs, and as some of these larger corporate kind of publicly traded companies start falling apart, I think you're going to start seeing a lot of that double A space kind of grow with new studios and talent, and create games that are maybe budgeted correctly, expectations are set correctly. You're going to see great, leaders from these other studios. I think I think you look at, and maybe Concord's a terrible example, but those are all people that left Xbox 343, Bungie, EA, and they came together and they're like, we know how to make a shooter. Let's make a shooter. Let's make a shooter that we think will be satisfying. And from all accounts, Concord is fun to play. It's just the characters are kind of bland or boring. I haven't played it. I saw a trailer. I thought it looked kind of cool, but also I hate the DualShock, so I'm probably not going to play it. But yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of these smaller studios pop up, and that was kind of a joke, by the way. We had a whole discussion last week on the DualShock controller.
Yeah, I know. That's why I haven't said anything.
I know. Although that Concord one looks sick, and the Astrobot one.
It does.
Sick.
Yeah.
I'm tempted to buy that Concord controller just because I feel like the Concord is going to crash and burn, and like this is going to be the proof that the thing even existed.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be one of those things where Sony's investing in something that's not really gonna turn out well for them.
Yeah.
We have Overwatch at home.
I think that's the other thing too. Like all these companies are on like kind of like the back foot because like they were chasing a trend that was popular at the time, but they didn't realize the development time that it took for it. For example, let's look at Suicide Squad. Hopefully, everybody got their free copy of Suicide Squad, Kill the Justice League. Like when Amazon was like, "Here, have it," because I think the servers are coming down real soon anyway. But I think they're supposed to deprecate it down to where like it can be at least a single player game. I think that was the plan for it. I'm not sure though. Don't quote me on that one.
There's a rumor that they're going to do a quote unquote offline mode.
Yeah, that part. Well, I think that was the other thing that kind of screwed them too, because like they put an always online clause into their game, which I'm like, if you don't want to get any sales, like tell people that you have to have an internet connection to play the game. Like you will not get if it's not traditionally a game that you need an online connection for. You know what I mean? Like like for example, I know. Well, I mean, I probably would have bought Tekken 8, regardless. But if they turn around and said Tekken 8, like you always need to have an always online presence, I probably would be like, nope. I know a lot of people have been like, nope, this is a fighting game. What the hell are y'all talking about?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if there's anything else productive we can say about this topic. It just really sucks, and I feel for all the people out there who lost their jobs. I hope everybody lands on their feet. I saw a bunch of companies tweet out, "Hey, we're hiring. Apply for our jobs." Like I know a lot of Xbox studios did today
because they know that's some talent. This is Bungie we're talking about. This is some talent.
Yeah. EA 343. A lot of shooter companies were tweeting out stuff today.
Remedy also, I remember them.
Yep. I think even Treyarch and Infinity Ward were tweeting out like they were hiring for their projects. So I hope everybody affected finds something. It really sucks.
Yep.
If you want to see how you can become a Patreon producer, head on over to patreon.com/BossRushNetwork. The Patreon producers for this month are Adriel Munger, Austin Campbell, Celeste Roberts, Christian S., Sana Dierig, Francisco Santillan, Matthew Keel, and Todd Oxtra. Thanks for your continued support of the Boss Rush Network.